Welcome to another episode of Off the Lip, and today we have gone a little bit more out there and we're actually sitting in the back of our next guest's camper van overlooking one of the most beautiful North Cornish coastlines. My guest today is a very, very well-known name amongst surfing's community for many different reasons. He's an author, he's a travel writer, he's also a plastic eco-warrior, waging war on plastic both here in the UK as well as globally, and he's also been working with the Caravan and Motorhome Club, who are our official partners. Welcome to Off the Lip, Martin Dorey.
Thank you very much, Martin. It's lovely to be here. This is great. I mean, what a spot. It's awesome, isn't it?
You can just come up here and just chat away, and just every now and again I hear the waves breaking in the background and I'm kind of drawn towards some beautiful vista. Yeah, this is the North Cornish coast looking across Widmouth over towards Bude, and we thought we'd come out today. Martin is an avid Caravan and Motorhome Club supporter. You're a motorhomer, and you have used your kind of passion for the motorhome lifestyle to write many books, which we're going to get into as we go through our episode today. We're also going to talk about a recent project you've been on and a little bit about your 2-minute beach clean. So are you ready for it?
Yeah, far away.
Fantastic. So Martin, obviously as a passionate surfer, where did your passion for surfing come from?
I've got this image marked, in my brain of a guy taking off on a wave in Bantham, golden backlit, sunset surf when I was probably 5 or 6, and it was the coolest thing I'd ever seen. I had no idea what surfing was. I grew up in the southeast, so miles away from the sea, and I was on holiday with my parents. Badgered my parents to let me spend all my holiday money, which was £5 for 2 weeks, on one of those King Surf polystyrene surfboards, and just got into the water, and it engulfed me. And then later, I was a skater from the original craze of 76. I've still got my first board. And so I started skating. And then when I could drive, it was the natural next step to get in the car, come down here. I bought a board from Windjammer in Braunton, and then went to Bantham and learnt to surf over many years in Bantham.
It's one of those places I've yet to surf yet. I see some beautiful shots of kind of like the Wrights peeling into the river mouth and those areas. Am I right? The island in the background.
Yeah.
So
that's a gorgeous place.
Very photogenic beach. So from Bantham, you now reside here in North Cornwall. So in terms of moving this way, what brought you to this part of the neck of the woods?
Well, I moved to Bradworthy, so slightly inland from Bude, when I was. It's still in my 20s. I was self-employed, working freelance in the film industry by that time. And I wanted to live here. I didn't want to buy a house in London. So I bought a house for a ridiculous amount of money in Bradworthy, and then moved everything here. And then I would travel back up country to work. And it was a long process of trying to make things work down here so that I could live here permanently. So I've been here since 96. And it's just been awesome, all of it. It's just incredible, yeah.
Beautiful place. So you trained as in film, in your degree. When did you move and transition towards kind of like being a writer?
I always wanted to write, but it's something for the school teacher in you, Martin, because I never knew how to do it. I didn't know how to become a writer. There were no university courses. There was short of studying English literature, so there was no pathway. I just sort of started writing and sent things off to magazines, and I had a piece in the first or second edition of the Surfer's Path, if anyone remembers the Surfer's Path, and I used to send pictures in and stuff, so I've gradually got myself a portfolio. And then when I was I think I was 35, I was fed up with the film industry. It was really a difficult industry to work in. I got a job locally here as a copywriter, so I was writing full-time for advertising. And then when I left there after about 5 years, I set up my own company, and then had the opportunities to start writing books. So it was kind of a long process. But everything that I did mattered. Every little bit that I did was relevant to where I'm at now.
Yeah. And I remember watching your series that was the kind of red and white camper van traveling around, and you were cooking. And that's actually one of the first cookbooks that my wife bought me a number of years ago. It's still in my bookcase. I actually almost thought I'd bring it and just bring it up in the background now. But that kind of the link between the summer and as surfers going out in a camper van, either a day trip or maybe being able to travel down to France or Portugal or even into Morocco in the winter, which many of our surfers from this country do through the winter. What drew you towards thinking, hey, I can connect surfing to travel and maybe write about it? Because you've done that really, really well.
So I've always had vans, and I started surfing in North Wales. I went to university in Manchester, so you had to stay the weekend, so vans were everything, and I stayed in a friend's van and then finally got my own van, and I've had vans ever since. I spend a lot of time in them, and I never really felt like, when I was living in London, I spent 7 years in London, I had anything to say, and then when I got down here and I was in the van and I started foraging a bit, and I started cooking a little bit, and I would cook prawns and stuff that I found on the beach and go lobstering and stuff. And then suddenly I realized, maybe I've got something here. Maybe this kind of idea about a book, a weekend away in a van, how to do it, and it's natural for us, because we've spent our lives traveling in camper vans, and lots of surfers who have spent their lives grown up maybe in their parents' vans and now got their own vans. It's second nature to them. It's easy. But for people who don't live by the coast or don't have vans all the time, it's something, they don't have that.
Yeah.
And that was what I wanted to sort of package up and try and put into book form. And that's what my first book was, which was the Camper Van Cookbook, which was largely, just food on two rings, easy stuff.
Oh, I've used some of your recipes. They were delicious. The burgers especially. I'm
yes.
quite privy to a burger on any surf trip I go on, no matter where it is. You talk about the book in terms of giving people kind of the knowledge, perhaps the knowledge where they haven't come from a surfing background. I don't know about you, but one of the books that went everywhere with me on my first surf trip to Ireland and over into the European continent was the Storm Rider Guide.
Yeah.
Everybody had a Storm Rider Guide.
Yeah.
And I would go to locations and tick off beaches I'd got to, or on the headland draw another little beach or a reef that we found.
Yeah.
So you moved from your cookbook, and then you realised, maybe if I'm building off that, what was next in terms of journeys and the coasts of our British Isles? So you've written many books. Tell me a few books that you've written so far around our coastal journeys.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, the main book, sort of series of books that I write at the moment is called Take the Slow Road. And the idea came about because I was travelling up the west coast of Wales for Coast magazine, writing an article for them. And it was called Slow Coasters. And it was kind of like, hang on a second, I wonder if there's a book in this. And I'd been searching for an idea. And so the idea of Take the Slow Road as a sort of pun on Take the High Road, Take the Low Road was just like, well, look, slow down, appreciate things, go to places like this. And why don't I just write a whole load of journeys? And it was just before the North Coast 500 became a thing. And it was kind of like people were starting to curate these journeys, like the Causeway Coast, the Wild Atlantic Way, and I put them all into a book. I did Scotland first, and that sold, really well. It really caught people's imagination because, especially, during COVID, because everybody wanted to go off in a van.
Yeah.
So I've kind of, if you like, I've been riding the coattails of the camper van, sort of van life explosion, if you like.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's great for me. It comes from a genuine place because I've always had vans.
Yeah.
But I'm lucky that it sort of catches people's imaginations, I think.
Without a doubt. I mean, you couldn't get vans for love nor money at the time of the pandemic, and people were coming down. I remember the road where I live, and people were just offering money for people's camper vans. They just wanted to be able to have that ability to escape and get away. I think what the pandemic made us appreciate was how fortunate we are that we can get outdoors and see just how beautiful the British Isles are. So you've done Scotland. Where else have you written in terms of the British Isles before you move into Europe?
Well, I did England and Wales, so covered that. And Ireland. Ireland was always the kind of the one that I really wanted to do because I just wanted to go and surf in Ireland. Having surfed there for a long time, my first wife was Irish. My kids got Irish passports. So I've spent such a lot of time in Ireland. So I was really, really looking forward to getting over to Ireland to Take the Slow Road Ireland, which was just brilliant. I loved it. It was so good. We scored such good waves over there, And then after that, after Ireland, we did France. So, and again, went down the West Coast, had some great times, and up into the Alps as well, which is really great. And then Spain and Portugal. And at the moment, I'm updating England and Wales, and I'm doing another book about Scotland, and I'm shortly next year going to be heading off to cover the Alps, which is really exciting actually, because we'll go winter and summer, and it means I can go to the wave pool in Switzerland. At least get my fix.
You pick your routes based around best surf spots and go, well, we're going to go past there. Let's go back to Ireland. It's one of my favourite places I've ever surfed in my time. Where were some of your noticeable, like, amazing locations to camp, but also phenomenal waves that you had on that trip? If you're allowed to mention their names.
Yeah, I mean, the Ring of Kerry, there's a beach on the Ring of Kerry. There's a series of reefs on the Ring of Kerry. And one morning on Lizzie's birthday, we woke up to just head-high perfection on one of these beaches. It's really rare. And if I say about the conditions, people who know it will know it. Basically, it's a bay that faces sort of almost south. So you need a south swell and an east wind. And that's quite rare in Ireland because you often get west swells. West swells don't get in there. And we scored it to ourselves, just the two of us, until the tide dropped out. We just turned up at absolutely the right time. And it was just amazing, just beautiful. It wasn't massive, shoulder high, I don't think I duck dived once in the whole session because it was such a perfect little rip. That was really good. And there's a whole load of reefs near Mulligmore that I've surfed a lot. My mum's partner bought a house in Mulligmore for a while, overlooking the harbour. So we sort of spent a lot of time there and exploring those reefs near there. And people will know where they are. That's my favourite place.
Have you ever seen it really big?
I've watched Mulligmore break big a few times. Yeah, quite impressive. And also, it's the way they organise themselves over there. The Irish Water Patrol, I think it's called. They're really well organised. They had a meeting in the pub the night before, and they set times for when the boogie boarders are going to surf it, and then when the tide's right for the paddling, and then they go to tow. So that it was just amazing to watch. We sat on the cliff like absolutely, I don't know, enchanted with it. It was just brilliant.
Yeah, they've really got it made. The main guy, a fireman from Dublin, who comes across and supports the crew, all trained with seriously high-level kind of first aid qualifications. They've got that jet ski and the little kind of boat shed that's just at the top of the slipway as they come into the harbour. Yeah. And then, you've got Nick Van Rupp and these guys from all over the world that are knowing when Mulligmore's on. They've got a really solid crew there setting themselves up. The same when they go to Nazray. I think wherever there are big wave spots, there are those kind of like really organised kind of groups of people that safety is paramount, because there are waves of consequence. They're going to die if they get things wrong, and they need to make sure they've got every sort of T and I crossed and dotted, haven't they? Passion in Ireland. It's a great place to surf. We're going to talk to you a little bit later in this episode about what you did last year with I watched you through Instagram and it blew my mind. But I wanted to move a little bit back towards another thing that you were the founder of. 2 minute beach clean, 2 minute beach clean hashtag. If you are a person that's down at the coast, you must have seen those billboards which have got little grabbers and bags made out of tents and material that have been taken from festivals. You founded that. You started that. You started that on one of those beaches over there.
Yeah, fourth one in, whatever.
Tell me how that came about.
It was a bit mad, really, because it's a sort of series of events, really, as it always is. So we got to have a big shout out to the mayor of Widmouth, Ado Shorland.
I can see his house from here.
Yeah, who runs the Widmouth Task Force, and I attended lots of his beach cleans. I also attended lots of beach cleans, Surfers Against Sewage beach cleans, with Dom Ferris when he was there. He's now at Trash Free Trails, it was kind of, I found a beach. I lived on the north coast, so round the corner from here, and I went to this beach, and it was knee deep in plastic, literally knee deep. And it was kind of like, right, organised beach clean. So we did it with my kids' school, and we organised that. And I kind of kept organising beach cleans and going to beach cleans. And I kind of realised that beach cleans are quite hard work. And there's a lot of committed people, but it takes a lot of commitment from a lot of committed people to make a big beach clean. And so the idea of the 2 minute beach clean was just kind of like, well, we'll just go and just do it every time you go. Because as surfers, we're on the beach more than anyone. And it's really nothing to stick a couple of bottles under your leash that's wrapped around your fins on the way back up the beach. Just do 2 minutes every time you go to the beach. And then by that time, it will make life easier for people like Ado, and it will make life easier for Surfers Against Sewage, because they're doing the big beach cleans at the weekend, and then we can do the kind of weekday work. And so that was the idea. And it kind of, that was the main kickoff was Hercules, the big storm, when our favourite left-hand point break was working up around the corner. And Crooklet's beach in Bude was terrible. You must remember all the beach huts. The beach huts in front of your beach hut were all destroyed.
Absolutely.
So we cleared them all up, and I just sort of went back and I'd go back and I'd do 5 minutes, go back, and I just kept going back and posting it to Instagram, and it kind of blew up. And it blew up from there into a charity that now employs, I don't know, 10 or 15 people. We've got something like 12 or 1,300 of those beach clean stations around the coast and inland as well. There's a bunch of them in the City of London. So that's amazing. I'm not anything to do with it anymore because I needed to sort of have some headspace for other stuff. But my heart's absolutely in it, totally.
You set the ball rolling, Martin. You created that kind of momentum that's still rolling away. And I think it's like marginal gains. When you talk about the amount of surfers that surf here in the UK or across Europe, if we're all just picking up a small amount of plastic, you're chipping away at that massive monstrosity of plastic that we find on our coastlines, that you're making a difference every time you do it. And when everyone does a small amount, a large gets done. And that's the thing, isn't it? And you just change the mindset of doing, rather than large organised beach cleans, if we do it all individually ourselves, whenever we get a chance for 2 minutes, we make a huge difference. And our beaches, I mean, this one behind us, Widmouth here, it's had blue flag status for a number of years because of the way in which the community keep it clean, but also we're removing plastic.
Yeah, I mean, the 2 minute beach clean station is actually a tickable criteria for a blue flag nomination, which is just brilliant. So if you've got that, that's an environmental initiative. So all those kind of things are absolutely, I mean, it's just brilliant. I love it. I love the fact that it's been, you know, we had Instagram posts from a scientist in Antarctica in the first couple of years, and that was like, I've done my 2 minute beach clean, like, wow, this is like, we've gone the distance, you know. And that was really exciting, and it is exciting. And you know, when I see surfers picking up now, I just, you know, a plea to anybody who's listening or watching this, just, if you're not picking up yourself, thank someone who is, because it makes a difference. Because all those little, like you say, all those little things add up. 2 minutes adds up to a massive difference.
I remember reading an article, and it's kind of like not so much a proverb, about a load of starfish washed up on a beach, and a man's walking along, and there are millions on this beach, and he's throwing them one at a time, and another person says to him, "Why are you throwing that starfish back? What's the point? You know, there's millions, you're never going to make a difference." He goes, "It doesn't matter." And the man picking up the starfish goes, "Well, it mattered to him." And it mattered to him, because it's those little things, those marginal differences of you just doing your bit makes a bigger picture better.
I mean, it's, if you think about it from in terms of like literal numbers and figures. So a plastic bottle, I don't want to get too much into this, but one plastic bottle will break down into about 1,500 tiny pieces of plastic, and each one of those could be eaten by a fish, which will then poison that fish, and it won't kill it on its own, but you know, cumulatively, and that the toxins from those plastics will bioaccumulate up the food chain, and then we get you know, a lovely mackerel, and it's got that piece of plastic from that bottle in it that we didn't pick up. But if you pick up the bottle, you neutralize the threat, so to speak. And so every bit matters. Every tiny little piece makes a difference.
My boys, I always talk to them about the fact, for every great wave that they can, they have to pick up a piece of plastic on the way back in to kind of like say thank you for that experience. And they come back with plastic shoved up the side of their wetsuits, in their little zips at the side. And when they're taking their wetsuits off in the shower, there's just plastic falling out of them. And I'm like, good lads, I'm proud of that.
You nailed that, Martin, because I mean, that's one of the things that when I started was like, I'll just pick up a bottle for every wave. And I think we had a piece in the Surfer's Path, or it might have been Wavelength, I can't remember, about that, and I was writing articles and trying to get people to listen, and that was the idea. It's like, if you have a good wave, thank the beach by picking up a bottle. Simple as that. You know, we're there, we're on the front line.
We're making a difference, and you can clearly see it from you and I living here for a number of years, of how cleaner our beaches are from what they were.
I think they are, aren't they? Yeah. There's not big stuff anymore, lots of little stuff, but not big stuff.
So that's amazing, and the 2 minute beach clean goes on, and you know, you've stepped away, but I know that it's in great hands with Claire and many of the team that are here. So I want to bring it back to the adventure you set off on last year.
Yes.
You're going to be writing a book about it, which is one of the ones that I can't wait to read, and also kind of like see whether I can maybe recreate it in the future. Tell me about what you and Lizzie got up to last year.
Okay, so the idea was, it came about, we were on our way to Nazaré a few years ago, and we were outside Figueira de Foz on our way to Nazaré to watch Big Surf, which was incredible. And we saw this couple cycling down this road, dusty road in the middle of nowhere, and we just thought, you know what? Do you fancy that? Do you fancy doing a bit of cycle touring? And then it kind of went from there, and it was kind of the idea that we should follow. It's like this pilgrimage that every surfer from Britain cuts their teeth or, nearly dies or, whatever they do in Europe at some point. That's the first thing I did. First summer in 1985 it was. First car, first summer, straight down to Lacanau. And that's what we did. And we did it for years and years and years. And I've been doing it ever since. And, writing my books is just a different version of the same trip, really. So the idea was, well, why don't we cycle this? Why don't we do it? Because, we're concerned about the environment. We're concerned about the carbon footprint of driving a van all the time. Why don't we try and do it in a different way? And then that sort of the idea went from there. So basically we cycled with surfboards on trailers from Tavistock, which we went to Plymouth to get the ferry, and then got the ferry to Roscoff, and then cycled from Roscoff down to Nantes. But when we got to Nantes, we hit the coast and we cycled along the coast down to Spain, crossed the north coast of Spain. We didn't go around Galicia because it's just too crenellated and convoluted. Went to Santiago de Compostela, and then from there went to Porto and cycled down the west coast of Portugal to Sagres, towing surfboards. A journey of 3,400 kilometres, climbing 29,000 metres in total, which is 2 Everests and a Ben Nevis, I think. And I don't know, and I'd really like someone to correct me on this, but I don't know if anybody's done that journey on bikes before, with boards. I mean,
I doubt it.
It's just I can't find any evidence of it. I mean, people have got on ferries to Santander and then cycled to Playa Moron or wherever. And people have done it in France quite a lot because France is flat.
Yeah.
But the whole journey, I don't think anyone's done it. It was amazing.
There's the walk that's quite a famous pilgrimage to Santiago de Compostela, which my father was actually going to do with a good friend of his just before the pandemic, and that put scupper to that, so that's on their back burner. But no, the cycle route, especially, I've been around northern Spain and Galicia. It's not flat. It's just hills, mountains. If you come around the corner from Mundaka and all those areas, it's one of the most stunning coastlines, but it's not the easiest place to cycle.
Oh, it's awful, yeah.
So where did you find that actually the cycle touring with a trailer, with the boards on top, was a doddle, a dream? Where was it really easy to do?
Oh, in France was easy.
Yeah.
France was so easy. I mean, it took us 9 days to get to the coast, and we hit the coast just at the end of the Loire. So that would be around where Bud is and breaks like that. I can't think of any other offhand, but we hugged the coast there, and it was easy. And we kind of, we were climbing, I don't know, 10 meters a day because we're just running through the pine forest at the back of the beach, often in places where motorized transport can't get to because vans are sort of quite well restricted now in France and Spain. So we found we had really good access. So whizzing down there, and then that was amazing. And then as soon as we got to Spain, it was outside Onday. I don't know if you remember, when you go to Irún, you go across the bridge. And then if you go on the motorway, you go inland.
Through all the tunnels.
If you go on a bike, you take the old road. So you go straight over Mount Jasquibel. I'm not exactly sure how to pronounce it, to San Sebastian.
Yeah.
And that was the hellish day. It was raining all day. But I should backtrack a little bit, because one of the things that we wanted to tell was the story of surfers traveling this route. Yeah. So the idea of, and you talked about pilgrimage, and the book is about surfers as pilgrims. So we made a pilgrimage to Lacanau, we made a pilgrimage to Osgore, and we made a pilgrimage to Le Bar and Biarritz and Mundaka. And the idea was that we would follow in the footsteps of surfers who'd done it before. So I interviewed quite a few big names from British surfing, Andrew Cotton, Sam Bleakley, Paul Blacker, and some locals from Bude as well, who went to Zerouts in 64 or 65, which is before anyone had ever surfed in Zerouts, and they surfed it. And so it's kind of like, so we went to Zerouts, and we're travelling on bikes, going on the old roads because we can't take the motorways, following in the footsteps of the guys who went before and telling stories of what happened when they were there. And so it was a magical adventure. I mean, we got to surf Mundaka with me and Lizzie with one other person, and admittedly it was like this big, and the tide was a bit full.
Still fun.
It was amazing. It was kind of like the most perfect A-frame peak that you could imagine, in with a really bad rip because the tide was too high, but it was just so much fun. And just to paddle out, like, this is Mundaka, I haven't been here for years, and just get in the water. And then we interviewed Craig, who owns the Mundaka Surf Shop, who used to be the director of the Billabong Pro at Mundaka, and he had all his stories to tell about about Carwyn living in the church in Mundaka, and all the kind of the way that the surfers and the fishermen interacted in the early days of Mundaka. And then also there's a guy whose house you can probably see from here, Doc Sweet, who reckons they found this amazing left-hand point break, and they thought they were the first people to surf it in the late 60s. I think it was 68. And they were told by a local that no, there was a guy with a Union Jack surfboard who was there the year before. Now we know who that is. That's Rod Sumter.
Yeah.
So so it's kind of these little stories intertwined, and so we were just trying to discover all these places along the way. It's just it's the best thing I've ever done. It's amazing.
For us as surfers, when we go on our pilgrimage, as you describe it, although we may be following in the footsteps of others, it is that experience of when you turn a corner and you get a new vista like we have here behind us with waves breaking, that no matter what our age, it just electrifies you, doesn't it? And you sense it, and you just like, everything goes out the window. You're just ripping your clothes off, putting your wetsuit on. Your kids are going, but Dad, wait for me. And I'm like, nope, not waiting for you boys, we're going in. And the fact of the matter is, I think that brings out the Grom in all of us, doesn't it? It brings out that childhood experience of when everyone remembers your very first surf trip you ever went on. And as surfers, we want to keep doing that until our last days.
I mean, it was magical. I mean, getting into Zerouts, I've just told you about Vico, who surfed there. I think it was 64 or 65. They surfed there. They turned up on the old road because there was no motorways at the time. And he said to me, we turned this corner and we looked down, and there was the most perfect surf we'd ever seen. We were cycling on our bikes on the old road, and everyone who knows Zerouts will know the campsite at the top of Zerouts. Came up to the top of the hill, that view, it was like better than this. And it's absolutely pumping. We're like, we've got to get down there. And this is what, and for all we knew, we were the first people to ever surf it. And Vico was the first person, we think, to surf it. And we just felt like we were doing exactly the same thing again. We're following in the footsteps. But it was still new. It was still brand new.
New to you.
Yeah, new to us. And we had an amazing surf in Zerouts. And it was quite busy, but it was pretty chill, actually.
Your kind of ecological impact of that journey, you and I were talking about this, your boards were made of wood.
Yes.
So where did you get your boards made?
So boards made locally.
Yeah.
I had one made by Chris Hartop. So it's a 7-foot twin pin. So it was kind of the idea that it could sort of surf small and bigger stuff, which was recycled polystyrene blank with wrapped in Polonia with cork rails, and then I got a cork deck pad for it. So I had no wax, and that's about. I mean, Chris will tell you it's about gold standard as far as eco boards were concerned. And that was really important to me because I wanted this trip to be, if anybody kind of says, oh, we'd love to do that, like, okay, well, let's make our impact really small. So we took a meth stove, which is non-fossil fuel. We had Ulex suits, and we had sort of secondhand stuff off eBay and stuff like that. So we tried to keep the impact as low as possible, just to make a point. That it is possible to do a surf trip without spaffing a load of carbon. I mean, it's the complete opposite of a strike mission, because like we would turn up at a beach and like, is the surf good? Yes, it is. Shall we go in? Yes, we will. Is it a bit small? We'll go in on the belly boards. Is it flat? Okay, let's carry on. And it was like that. We couldn't sit and wait for waves because we had a limited amount of time. Yeah.
So how many days were you allowed to be in the European continent in terms of with our current kind of Brexit disaster?
90 days.
90 days.
Yeah, 90 days. So that was our kind of deadline, was to get to Sagres. We did it in 77 days, and then we had so this van, a friend of ours brought this van down to Sagres, which is a little bit against the kind of eco thing. But we had no way of getting our bikes back and our trailers and boards and stuff. So he drove the van back. We loaded it all. He drove it down to Sagres, met us in Sagres, and we had a week driving back up to Santander when we got the ferry back.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, those restrictions, if those 90 days didn't exist, you could spend the time you needed to, and then when you were ready, you'd make your way back. But it's just, unfortunately, those times have changed. Maybe one day we'll be allowed to do a whole year and cycle down there. I mean, you'll have legs like Chris Hoy by the time you finish.
Well, yeah. I mean, you could. I mean, if we were going to extend it, you could, in theory, cycle down to Sagres. And let's put this into someone's mind. Cycle with boards for 3 months from England down to Sagres and then down to Tarifa and get on the ferry to Morocco, have your 3 months in Morocco over the winter, and then cycle back in the spring. Yeah. And that would be 9 months.
Because you'd be out of the country for those times that you have to be and be able to get back into Europe and still then complete it.
Yeah.
That is,
there you go. There's the challenge.
That's the next book, Martin. That's the next book.
Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, I'd love to do that. It's so exciting. I mean, just kind of, even just taking away that kind of, I didn't even look at Surfline. Because I'd sort of go, is it going to be all right tomorrow? But it didn't matter because we were just travelling. Yeah. And it was that way that, Roger Tout said to me, we'd go down one road, like, surf's no good. We'll go down the next one. That's all right. Should we go in? Yeah, let's go in. And it was that mentality. And it made us really, really appreciate any waves, so because it was mostly flat when we were coming through France. And we got some really good waves at Le Penon. When we turned up there, and it was just like, wow, we've been cycling for 3 weeks, still the best surf trip I've ever been on without surfing. But then the first day of surf was just excellent, so we kind of felt like you'd really earned it. And even when it was like Mundaka at sort of shoulder high on the peak and nothing special, we went in because we're here, we're going to surf Mundaka. And that was that kind of like you say about child. I'm smiling now because I'm thinking about that. Yeah, we cycled to Mundaka and we went in, and there were only 3 of us, and it was great, even though it wasn't perfect. So,
but in some ways, it was perfect because you'd earned that, and that felt like that reward was even more sort of perfect for you.
Oh, it was, yeah, absolutely.
So, when do we expect this next chapter, this next book, to be out for the reading pleasure of our guests? And hopefully, I'm sure this has stirred quite a lot of interest in it.
Well, hopefully, yeah. I mean, it comes out in September. I think it's September the 5th. I think it's actually just coming out in time for Wavelengths Expo in Newquay. Yeah. So I'm going to try and do something with them. I've got all these amazing interviews with these incredible surfers. Graham Bunt's stories about meeting up with some Portuguese surfers in Portugal. So I interviewed, I'm going to do a slight digression here. There's a guy called Joe Luis, who was one of Portugal's first native surfers. He had boards from travelling surfers in the early 70s. He was a lifeguard, and he travelled up to Peniche. Now, Graham Bunt went to Peniche in 1972, found it by accident, spent the whole winter there with one other guy surfing, and they met 4 other people. And he said to me, I met 4 Portuguese surfers. One of them could speak English and the other were brothers or something. So when I met this guy in Portugal, we met him in at Laguincho near Lisbon. And he sat and interviewed him. And he said, oh, yeah, I used to surf with my 3 brothers and my friend whose mum worked at the American embassy, so he could speak really good English. I'm like, hang on a second. So you were up in Peniche?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that would have been us. And like, oh, my goodness, this is 72.
Such a small world.
This intersection between the local surfers, British surfers, it's so important. Even when you think about Tiki, they were blowing foam. They had the license to blow Bennett foam, so they were taking foam down to Biarritz and kicked off the European surf industry. So the British surf industry is older than the European surf industry, and it's been so influential. We should be really proud of that as a nation,
Yeah, and that's really uniquely interesting to think that we sometimes look at the likes of the French, the Portuguese, the Spanish in terms of their ability. They are leading ahead of us on many of the world tours. They've got more people on the WCT. Yet we founded, in theory, the roots of European surfing. And we as a nation are now catching up that we've got some incredible youth, some incredible talent that's coming up. We've got Emily Curry, who's on episode 1. She was, our UK representative on the World Longboard Tour last year. She competes once again against many of those European surfers. However, it started here. It started in the UK, and those exploring surfers in their camper vans down to those European coastlines found those waves, introduced surfing perhaps to those communities, and now look, when you go down there, you can see it's thriving.
I mean, it's incredible, isn't it, really? When you think about it, it really was freedom and Tiki and Bilbo's
Yeah.
that kicked it all off, because there was only one manufacturer in France, and he started manufacturing, I think, in the early 60s. First surf shop opened in France in 61 or 62, Joe Morais's place. But the majority of all the materials were coming from here, because they were so expensive in France. And I interviewed Masha, Martin Ward, who works for Tiki still. He was working for Tim, and he was driving the boards down. And the stories of them taking their stuff down to Biarritz was just incredible. And so when we got to Biarritz, we were able to kind of recount this history of like this town that's just so embedded with surfing. And it all came from kind of, from Hollywood, but also from the British.
Good on us. Yeah. So we obviously mentioned our headline sponsor for the podcast this year for Off the Lip is the Caravan and Motorhome Club. You've had the pleasure of working with them for the last 10 years. What are some of the roles that you've been doing with them, and how do you enjoy working with them this year?
First of all, I love working with them. They are like a big family, as you'll know from meeting Nikki and the team.
Yeah.
But I started working for them. I was invited to be a judge when they did Caravaner of the Year a few years ago. And I went on that, which was great. And then I started going to some of the events. I took some of the beach clean stuff down to the English Nationals. And I've cooked a bit. And you'll probably remember we did chorizo burgers and drop scones with the sort of jam or cream on first. And, in fact, actually, when it came to it, the Groms didn't care. They just ate the lot, demolished everything. So I did a bit of cooking with them. And then the last sort of 10 years or so, I've been working as a judge for the Motorhome and Campervan Design Awards each year, and I go and I meet the family up at the NEC and spend a lot of time with them. So I love working with them.
Yeah.
They're great, and I'm a member of the club. I use all their sites, and I wrote for their magazine for a while. So I've got really, really close connections with them, and because we need to stay places, and they've got a great network of European sites. I mean, we were talking about one of the sites in France.
Yeah, it's one of our favourites.
Yeah, which is you literally walk out of the campsite down to the sort of sandy reef break in Biarritz. And they've got some amazing locations, and they're really nice people, and they look after you, so I can't praise them highly enough, really.
Yeah, big shout out to the Caravan Motorhome Club.
Absolutely.
And I think on that, Martin, with this gorgeous view, we can see 2-foot lines there. I think you and I might need to get our boards and maybe go for a little early morning surf.
I'm surprised we haven't cut it short earlier, actually. Looking at the sets coming in.
That is dreamy background. So, thank you for coming on Off the Lip, Martin. It's been a pleasure to hear your story of how you came to North Cornwall and then obviously into your passion for writing. And I hope that the next book, when it comes out in September, is a roaring success. I'm sure it will be.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Martin, for having me on.
It was great to get to hear all about Martin Dorey's journeys along not only our British coastline, but down to Europe with his epic bike ride that he'd completed last year. Thank you once again to the Caravan and Motorhome Club, who are official sponsors for this whole season, and to Mora Media House for capturing the action, this time on location with this amazing view in the background. I'll see you in our next episode.
I've been running from the wind. I can feel the darkness creeping in.
I'm Martin Reay, and I'm your host of Off the Lip, brought to you by Surfing England, the national governing body of surfing in England. Thank you to the Caravan and Motorhome Club, our headline sponsor, and to Mora Media House for creating these podcasts.